The first World Cup knockout match just turned into FIFA's worst nightmare. The consequences here are absolutely unprecedented.
One match. That was all it took for the cracks to show. The first ever knockout fixture of the first ever 48-team World Cup. The moment FIFA had been selling to the planet for nearly a decade. And what the world got was a 1-0 grind decided in the 94th minute by a tired leg and a deflected shot. This is something that has never happened before in the modern history of this tournament. A round of 32, a bloated bracket, a knockout opener that played out like a wet Tuesday night in a forgotten cup tie. And if you think the booing inside that stadium was just frustration with one bad game, you have no idea what was already unraveling behind the scenes at FIFA headquarters before the final whistle even blew. Let me set the scene. Mo Field, Toronto, a Sunday afternoon, the maple leaf draped across every inch of the stands, and 45,000 Canadians showing up, expecting a coronation. Canada, the co-host. Canada, the team that had finally, after decades of irrelevance, turned itself into something resembling a footballing nation. On the other side, South Africa. Bafana Bafana. A side that had clawed their way out of a group nobody expected them to survive, ranked outside the top 50 in the world, and given almost no chance by the bookmakers. The final score was 1-0, Eustaquio in the 94th minute, with a shot that took a wicked deflection off a defender's shin and looped over a goalkeeper, who had been the man of the match for 93 of those 94 minutes, Alphonso Davies, making his long-awaited return from injury. Played 67 minutes, touched the ball more than any other Canadian on the pitch, and walked off limping. And here is the detail that twists the knife. South Africa hit the post in the 81st minute. Their captain, Teboho Mokoena, dropped to his knees, looked up at the sky, and said something to himself the cameras caught but the microphones could not pick up. He had no idea how prophetic that moment was, because 13 minutes later his entire World Cup was over. Now, on the surface, this looks like a classic underdog story that just didn't quite get its fairy tale ending. A host nation grinding past a brave African side. Drama, heartbreak, the kind of football the World Cup was built on. But the second you look behind the curtain, the picture completely changes. Because this match was not a one-off. This match was the first piece of evidence in what is rapidly becoming a much bigger conversation. That FIFA, in its rush to add 16 more teams, 24 more matches, and an entirely new round to its flagship tournament, may have built a knockout stage that is structurally incapable of delivering the football it promised. Start with the numbers, because the numbers do not lie. This match produced 4 shots on target across 94 minutes. 4, combined, between two nations who had fought through a global qualification cycle to be there. The expected goals total was 0.87 for the entire game. The ball was in play for 51 minutes and 22 seconds, which is below the tournament average and significantly below the average of every previous World Cup knockout opener since 2010. Read that carefully because it is extraordinary. The showcase match. The launch of the knockout phase. The moment FIFA had been advertising for years, and the ball was dead for nearly 43 minutes of it. Then there is the penalty, the one that should have been given and was not. In the 58th minute, South Africa's Lyle Foster was clipped inside the box by a trailing Canadian leg. Replay showed contact, clear contact. The VAR review took 3 minutes and 41 seconds. 3 minutes and 41 seconds for a check that on every previous broadcast I have ever watched takes 90 seconds at most. And when the decision came back, it was play on. No penalty, no yellow card, nothing. The South African bench erupted. Their manager, Hugo Bruce, threw a water bottle so hard it bounced off the technical area boundary and rolled onto the touchline. He said afterwards, and I am quoting him directly, "If that is not a penalty at this level, in this tournament, on this stage, then I do not know what football we are watching anymore." That is a 73-year-old Belgian World Cup winner. That is a man who has seen everything the game has to offer. And he is telling you, on camera, that he does not recognize the sport he was just asked to compete in. And then there is the detail that really tells you how far gone this format already is. This was a round of 32 fixture. A round that did not exist 4 years ago. A round that was invented because FIFA expanded the tournament from 32 teams to 48 and had to find somewhere to put the extra bodies. Which means the team that won this match, Canada, the host nation, the team being sold as a serious knockout contender, had to play an extra game before even reaching what used to be the first knockout round. An extra 94 minutes in the legs. An extra yellow card risk. An extra injury exposure. Alphonso Davies, the most important player in the entire squad, played 67 of those minutes on a leg that was not fully ready, and walked off the pitch favoring it. Think about that. The expansion did not add excitement. It added attrition. It added load. It added a round of football that nobody asked for, played by tired legs in a half-empty atmosphere, decided by a deflection. Brick by brick, the case builds itself. In the entire history of the World Cup, no knockout match had ever produced fewer than 5 combined shots on target since the data began being tracked in 1966. Until now. In the entire history of the World Cup, no opening knockout fixture had ever ended with the host crowd booing their own team at the final whistle of a win. Until now. In the entire history of the World Cup, no manager of a losing side had publicly questioned the legitimacy of the officiating within 60 seconds of the final whistle on the record. Until now. 3 firsts, 3 records nobody wanted. 3 reasons this tournament's launch is already being studied by the people who designed it as a cautionary tale. And the broadcast numbers compound the problem. The global audience for this match, according to early figures reported out of Zurich, was tracking 38% below the equivalent opening knockout match in Qatar 2022. Read that again. The first ever 48-team knockout match, the historic launch of the expanded format, the showcase event FIFA had spent 9 years building toward, drew nearly 40% fewer eyes than a Saturday afternoon round of 16 fixture in a tournament half its size. The economics of expansion were supposed to be the entire justification for this. More teams, more matches, more eyes, more money. The first piece of evidence is already pointing the other way. So what now? Because the next match, the very next knockout fixture, is Mexico against Norway in Mexico City. And the problems do not get easier from here. Norway are exhausted from a brutal group stage that saw them play 3 matches in 9 days. Mexico are managing 2 yellow card suspensions and a goalkeeper carrying a hamstring strain. Over the next 6 weeks, this tournament has to deliver 23 more knockout matches across a calendar that has been stretched, compressed, and rebuilt to accommodate the expansion. And every single one of those matches now arrives carrying the weight of what just happened in Toronto. Every dull first half will be scrutinized. Every missed penalty will be replayed. Every empty seat will be screen-grabbed and shared. The narrative has been set, and once a tournament narrative sets in the first weekend, it almost never breaks. Let me be fair for a second, because this channel does not deal in fantasy. It is entirely possible that Canada versus South Africa was simply one bad game. Knockout football, especially in opening rounds, has produced poor matches in every World Cup ever staged. Italy and Spain bored the planet to tears in 1994. Greece and Russia gave us 90 minutes of nothing in 2004 at the Euros. Bad games happen. Tired legs, cautious tactics, a defensive masterclass from a side punching above its weight. These things are part of football. It is entirely possible that the rest of this knockout stage delivers the drama and the quality FIFA promised, and that this match becomes a forgettable footnote in 6 weeks' time. But that is exactly what makes it a warning sign rather than a footnote. Because when your launch match underperforms by every measurable metric, when your host crowd boos a winning goal, when your losing manager publicly questions the integrity of the officiating, and when your global audience drops nearly 40% against the previous tournament, you do not get to dismiss it as one bad day at the office. You have to ask whether the structure itself produced the outcome. You have to ask whether 48 teams, won 4 matches, and a round of 32 grafted onto a format that worked perfectly fine with 32 teams and 64 matches has fundamentally changed what the World Cup is. Brick, after brick, after brick. A round nobody asked for. A match nobody wanted. A penalty nobody gave. A crowd that booed. A manager who broke. A star player limping. An audience that switched off. and a governing body in Zurich, sitting on the most expensive television rights deal in sports history, watching the opening exhibit of their grand expansion play out in front of half-empty corners and a stadium clock that seemed to slow down with every passing minute. When you spend 9 years selling the world a bigger, better, bolder World Cup, you do not get to launch it with 4 shots on target and a deflected winner and then ask everyone to pretend they did not just watch what they watched. Now, I want to hear from you. Was this just one bad match in a tournament that will eventually find its rhythm? Or is this the first crack in a format that was never going to work? Was Canada's win a brave, historic moment for the host nation? Or did the expanded structure rob it of every ounce of meaning it should have carried? Drop your verdict in the comments. Be honest. Be specific. Tell me whether you watched the full 94 minutes or whether you switched off at halftime. Because the data says a lot of you did. Subscribe if you have not already, because we are 3 days into this World Cup and it is already eating itself alive, and there are 51 more matches to go. Trust me, this will not be the last script we write about FIFA's worst nightmare. The first knockout match of the biggest World Cup ever staged ended 1-0 on a deflection nobody saw coming, in a stadium that booed its own winner, and by now, nobody's surprised.